friends, welcome back to the Craft Castle. You are either here because you bought my SVG file to create this interchangeable sign, or you watched my previous part 1 tutorial where I showed you how to create this SVG file. Yes, you did hear that right. You can either buy this SVG file and then you can come to part 2 and learn how to assemble it together, or you can learn how to design this from start to finish and then we get to assemble this together. So this is part 2 of this series. Okay, so now let's get into cutting this project, what we need to do to prep the wood for this, and what supplies you're going to need to create all of these little pieces. The very first thing is that you're gonna want to get some wood. I will link everything in the description of this video just so it's easy shopping for you. But for the backer of my board, I actually use this whiteboard material. You can get it at Lowe's. It will be linked in the description of the video, but one side is chalkboard and the other side is actually whiteboard. So you could, if you wanted to, you could do whiteboard markers on top of this. I just love that these ones right here are already white, and so there's going to be no painting involved because let's face it, I paint like a child and I want to make sure that my boards look amazing. So I'm going to be using whiteboard material for this. Now the other cool part is because we're using whiteboard material, you can see that I have not masked any of my wood. That's because I am just going to take a little bit of Clorox wipe and I'm going to wipe it down after I'm done cutting it. And then you're never going to see the charring on the wood. So the other thing that you're going to need is a little bit of wood. I use maple plywood that I get from Home Depot online. Again, everything will be linked in the description of this video. You are going to need one piece of maple plywood that has masking tape on it. I don't have it masked yet, but you can get some masking tape off of Amazon. You're gonna wanna mask your wood. Now, I do know that there are people out there that are laser crafters that don't mask their wood, and that's fine, you don't have to, but what happens is if you don't mask your wood, do you see in the backs of this where you have a little bit of charring on the back? That's because I didn't mask this wood. Now, I am not going to mask the things that I have painted. So like this right here, which is why you see the charring, I'm not gonna mask any of this. What I would have had it done is I have this spare piece of wood. I have actually taken like acrylic paint pens and painted my wood, or even just like acrylic paint. And I have painted my wood in certain spots where I know that I'm going to be cutting out like the apples, for instance, or like the leaves to my apples or the stems. I have just painted a little bit portions of my wood. That just helps with like the final assembly process, because what we're going to do is we're going to be engraving into this wood, and frankly, to try and get paint everywhere else but the inside of the engraving might be a little difficult. That being said, these are actually kind of small little pieces. So trying to hand paint small little objects might be a little difficult. So all I did was just kind of try and make it easier on myself, and I just painted some random spots. And when I throw this into the laser cutter, we're gonna be able to move this around where we need to. I will show you that here in a minute. Okay, the other thing for my pencil right here, I have 3 different colors. You are gonna need some black paint for this, or a paint marker if you have it. I love this brand of acrylic paint markers. I just don't have every single color of them. And then I got some pink right here. I'm gonna use some silver acrylic for the silver. And then I don't have this like golden color of what a pencil is. So I'm just gonna mix these 2 colors right here, deep coral and yellow, to like custom make this color. I mean, put these 2 together, it gets that color, I promise. But if you have the color of a pencil, or you just want to use straight yellow, you totally can. Okay, the other thing that you're going to need for this project is a little bit of wood glue, because we're going to be gluing some wood down. I'm going to be using Super Tights Multi-Grabs 360. This is your replacement for E6000 glue. It has 0 cancel warnings. Love this glue. But that is just so we can glue our pieces of magnets to it. I have small little magnets, which that's what these are. I have seen people use Velcro for their projects. If you have Velcro patches, you could use Velcro. Those are the ones that have like the sticky backs on it. That would be perfect. I just like to use what I have on hand, and I have a whole bunch of these small little magnets. So that's what I'm gonna use for that. And other random optional items that you may need is like a sanding block. We have like a brush to like brush off our sanding stuff, and then to like place on my small little magnets. I just like to use my little stick up tool. This is a lot of this is a lot of supplies. It's a little daunting, but I just want you to know before heading into this what everything you're going to need. Okay, so let's go to the computer. We are going to cut all of these pieces on our Glowforge. If you purchased my file or built my file in part 1, you could also do this file in Xtool as well. And then once we're done doing that, we'll go into the assembly process. So I have my file loaded and ready to go in Glowforge's app. I am going to start with that piece of dry erase board. So I am going to take everything that isn't going to be cut on that dry erase board, and I'm going to drag this over to the right. So if you purchased my SVG file, the only thing that you are going to need to create is the name for your pencil, dragging over my backer piece, which is going to be my piece of notebook paper. Anytime I am working with my Glowforge, I always like to come to these 3 lines and set focus manually. I never have good success with cutting if I just do the autofocus feature. I'm going to drag over just my notebook paper, and I'm going to put this onto my piece of whiteboard. You can see it's like lined up perfectly on there. It's not hanging off. When you want to cut your name, my name is going to be in black. And if you remember, the back of the whiteboard is black. So if I were to cut this out the way that it looks, if I go and try and turn this around to be on the black color, it would be backwards. So what I want to do is when I cut this, I want my name to be backwards. You could have flipped this backwards in your design program, or what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here to my ruler and I'm just going to copy one of these measurements. Then I'm going to take this bottom corner and I'm going to drag it up, and then I'm going to drag it down. Do you see how now this is flipped? Okay, if you have the Glowforge Pro, which is their design program, you could have just clicked this flip horizontal button, but because I don't use the Pro and I don't pay for the Pro, that's my only workaround for this. Okay, still having that selected, I'm gonna go back over into the size that you copied. So I copied the width, I'm gonna select that, and now I'm gonna paste it and press return. So this is the exact size that I had originally. It's just now in reverse. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rotate this over and put this down so where it fits on my whiteboard here and right here. Now that's the only things that's going to be put on my whiteboard. You're going to want to use the medium draft board setting for this. When you're done, press the ready button. Okay, so it's gonna take my machine 18 minutes and 8 seconds. We're gonna go over to the Glowforge and press that button, and then we're gonna wait the 18 minutes. As I wait for my whiteboard to get done cutting and engraving, I'm gonna prep my wood. Now, I've already done most of the prep work with the green and the brown, but I am going to need a little bit more of the red. So all I'm gonna do is take my acrylic paint pen and I'm just gonna fill in what I'm gonna need is red. Okay, now we're just gonna let this dry. Because it's a paint pen, it should dry pretty quickly. It should be dry by the time my whiteboard's done. Then what I wanna do is I am going to mask my wood. So using some masking tape, I'm gonna do front and back on this portion. This is the stuff that doesn't get painted, so I'm just gonna make sure and mask it. Okay, when I have my masking tape cut off, I'm just gonna take a hard credit card, something of that nature, and I'm going to really seal my masking tape on my piece of wood, trying to create no like lines in your masking, because that's what makes, like, you can have this potentially. So you want to make sure that it's nice and flat and that you don't have a whole lot of creases in your masking tape. Okay, and essentially that is it for the prep work. We have our masked piece of wood, we have our painted wood, and now we just wait for the rest of that whiteboard to get done cutting so we can start doing all the rest of the stuff. Okay, so I have the whiteboard piece cut. Now all I'm going to do is I'm going to slide this over, slide that over. Okay, so this wood right here I use as maple plywood, so I'm going to change my material over to medium maple plywood, and I'm going to do the 3 dots. Because I changed the material, I'm going to set focus manually, and then I'm just going to rearrange my apples to fit on the red of my project. Doing the same thing with the green leaves, put those right there, and we got some brown stems. I'm gonna take this pencil, I'm gonna drag this over, making sure that it doesn't hit my red paint. And then my little arrow tool, I'm gonna just drag this over. Okay, now that I have everything kind of where I need it, this piece right here needs to be your masked wood. So I'm just gonna leave that off my project board. I'm gonna zoom in. I'm gonna make sure that everything is not touching each other. Okay, now that I have that done, I've already set focus. So now I'm just gonna press ready and we're gonna cut those out. Okay, so it's only gonna take 17 minutes for this. I'm gonna go to my laser cutter and just press that button. Okay, well that cuts because we didn't mask this wood and it looks really dusty and gross. Remember I said that all we need to do is take like a Clorox wipe, just a piece of it. If you have just like a wet nap or, you know, a wipe or anything like that, anything works. We're just gonna wipe off the charring. This is the coolest thing about this material is that it just wipes away and you don't have to paint anything. Okay, and my back just looks a little dirty. I'm just gonna wipe that off. That is our board. Now we just wait for everything else. So now all we need to do is the ruler. So I'm gonna select everything, drag that over, and here is my ruler. Doing the same thing I did before. Using the three dots, I'm gonna set focus manually. And I put this on my piece of wood. Okay, and for this plywood, sometimes the engraves are a little bit too deep. You can see like with this one, I didn't change any of the settings and it is like very deep in, which is different than what this looks like, right? For this ruler, I am gonna come up here into the engrave and I'm going to click on this little caret button. And I'm going to bring the speed up to 1,000 and I'm going to bring my power down to 50 and I'm going to click out of that. Now going over into the letters, we need those letters. So finding the letter file right here, doing the same thing. We're going to click this caret. We're going to go up to full power and then down to 50 and then click out of that. Okay, now that it is set, focused, I'm just going to press that ready button and cut out my ruler. Okay, so for this, all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my paint pens and I'm just going to go over in the spots like that are missed with the paint pen. Okay, so I have just a plate that I got from IKEA years ago. And this is like what I use for like all of my paint and glue. So I'm just going to put like a little bit of glue on my plate. You're not going to need a whole lot for the apples. Okay, taking the apples, I'm going to dip the end of my stem into the glue and I'm going to press it onto my apple. Now it's going to look messy, that's okay, we'll fix that here in a second. Okay, then just doing my leaves. If you wanted to clean up your leaves color, you totally could do that too, just like what we did with the apple. I'm going to press this in really good. Okay, I'm just going to take a paintbrush and I'm going to wipe away the excess glue. Wood glue does not dry clear, or at least the wood glue that I use, so you want to make sure and wipe off the excess. Okay, there is that. They look so stinking cute. So we're going to just let those dry for a little bit. Okay, now taking our little arrow, we want to take this piece and we want to turn it around. So see how the painted piece, the bad sides are together. Okay, I'm going to take that same paintbrush that I was using to wipe off. I'm just going to put a little bit of glue down on that little piece and I'm going to put this on top of my arrow, lining all the edges up just like that. And now I'm just going to set that down and let that dry. You don't want to keep messing with that. Okay, now for this portion of it, it's just like we've done with everything else. You're just going to paint it. I like to start with the silver. So I'm just going to put a little bit of paint on my brush and I'm just going to rub that silver in. And depending on your quality of paint, you might need to do 2 different coats of your paint. This stuff right here I get at Hobby Lobby and it's actually pretty decent quality. Okay, for this, I'm just going to put a little squeeze. And I kind of want to just give it a little bit of bounce. I don't want to like do a nice even paint. I want to just bounce it a little bit just so it dries like that. I think that's cute. That makes it look like it's a eraser. Okay, we need that little tip for the black. So I'm just going to use that same branded acrylic paint that I get at Hobby Lobby. Just do a little bit. And this is where I'm just not going to be too profesh with it because, you know, let's like never perfect on a pencil, you know? That looks good. Okay, and then I'm channeling my daughter here. She is like the master at mixing paints. I am not, but since she is not here, I needed to figure out how to make my own paint color. So I just did like a squirt of the yellow, and then this like deep coral. I just like a little like that, just a little bit. Just kind of mix it up. Okay, then all I'm going to do, I'm just going to paint this thick. I have a smaller tipped brush. I'm going to go into the sides of these like jagged edge and just kind of fill in that little tight spot. Okay, when I have that filled all in, all I'm going to do is just paint the rest of that. Okay, now we're done and we're going to let that dry. Okay, so now that this is all done, I'm just going to peel the masking tape off. See how clean that engraving is compared to this one right here? There is a big difference, and that's just the speed that I did it to, but then also how well I put my masking tape on. So because I'd masked, I did a really good job with putting the masking tape on, I don't even need to sand anything because it looks perfect. Okay, taking my board, this one I'm not going to use the plate. I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on the back of my board, just like that. You don't need a whole lot of glue. Okay, and this one, let's see here. It's about a ½ inch on each side. There we go. Put that over to the side. Just kind of cockeye it. Okay, if you wanted to have interchangeable names, like my original board does not have an interchangeable name, then what you're going to want to do is put a magnet on the back of your pencil. I would suggest doing at least 2, if not 3, if you're using the small magnets to put on the back of your pencil. Now, I am not going to have an interchangeable name. It's all going to be one name. Okay, so all I'm going to do is doing the same thing I did with the ruler. I'm just going to put a little bead of glue down the back, okay? Using the ruler on my board, make sure that this is nice and center. There we go. When I have that done, I'm just going to take you can probably use your finger if you waited for your pencil ink to dry. I did not. It's still wet. The paint's still wet. But just pushing my pencil down so we get a nice glue mark. If you had like little clippers, you can clip these together. I'm not too concerned about it. It will lay flat eventually. Okay, this right here, see how this just kind of clicks on here? Okay, I can't glue the name on here yet because the paint is still drying. But what we can do is if you have Velcro, if you're doing Velcro, you can just put your Velcro on. I'm using magnets, so I'm going to be using the Multi-Grab 360. So I'm going to need all my magnets to stick together. So I'm going to need to make sure that they all do that. So I'm just going to hold a whole bunch like this. This is going to go down like this. You want to make sure that you don't glue the wrong sides down on your magnet. Okay, that works. Okay, I'm going to just take a little blob of glue, just like that. Because these magnets are so small, I'm just going to pick it up with my silicone tip and drop that magnet in there, and then I'm going to press down. See how that's going to just get magnetized on there? Okay, so there's my magnets. It's standing up. You want to make sure that you glue them on the correct way, because the last thing you want is for your magnets to not be magnetic and they want to separate because the magnetization. Okay, so I'm going to turn this around. I'm going to put a little dot of glue on the back of my apple. Taking my magnet, I'm going to flip it over. So now, oops, okay, picking it up, and I'm going to place it down into my apple. Now, you don't want to mess with these magnets too much because they are still wet, and we want to make sure that it doesn't start to come off. Okay, now what you need to do is let all your paint and your glue dry, and your wood glue and the glue for the magnets. When this is dry, I'm going to glue my name down, and then all of these will be interchangeable, and you'll be able to take pictures and have a beautiful finished product. To spare you the agonizing wait of watching my paint and glue dry, this is going to be your finished product, where all of your buttons or all of your magnets are going to be able to be interchangeable. And then this little thing, it does not hook onto anything. It'll just sit right on top of your ruler. And then you can change your ruler location to whatever grade that you need. And it just will stay up there while the child is taking the picture. All right, y'all, I sure hope I inspired you to create, and welcome back to school. I will see you later.